Today we're going to take a look at histograms and kind of talk about what histograms are, and then be able to construct a frequency distribution table, an interval frequency table, and then also a histogram for a set of data. Let's begin with some review. Let's calculate the range for the following set of data here. So to get the range, you do the high minus the low, so 9 minus 1, and you get 8. Now let's calculate the median. So remember, the median is the middle number. So you kind of go in towards the center, making sure that your numbers are in ascending order. And these are in ascending, so we're just looking for the middle numbers. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 numbers, which means our fifth number would be our middle number, which means that's the number 5. So number 5 is our median. And then we need the mean for the set of data. So remember, to get the mean, you add up all the numbers and you divide by the number of numbers. So you add 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9. And you divide it by the number of numbers in the data. So there's 9 pieces of data here. So you're going to divide the total by 9 and you get 5. Now let's calculate the mode. So the mode is the number that occurs the most in the set of data. So all of these numbers only occur once, which means your mode is none. There's no mode for this set of data. And now we have the question, out of the range, the mean, the median, and the mode, which of those would change if we added 5 to each piece of data? And the answer is the median and the mean would be 5 more. So your mode would still be none, and your range would still be the same, because even though you increased the upper limit and the lower limit, you changed it by the same amount. So the distance between the two is still the same. All right, here is a set of data. And if you are following along in your textbook, this set of data is found on page 404. This is actually grades of a test. So this is a percentages of a test grade. And so there are 24 students in this class. So there are 24 numbers here. And so these are the 24 test scores. So let's talk about what a frequency distribution table is. So it's a table that organizes a large set of data. So this is kind of the like a blank copy of a frequency distribution table. That first column is the data column, and that's going to contain the data arranged in numerical order with no repeats. So you only write the data once. And the reason that you only write it once is because then you're going to tally it. That's the next column. The tally is kind of like Roman numerals, like you're doing a tally marks. How many times did that data repeat itself, right? So if it's just 1, you have 1 tally mark. If it appeared twice, you have 2 tally marks, and so on. And then your next column, the frequency column, it's going to represent the number of times each number occurs, or the number of tallies. And then the number at the bottom, so you'll have a number down here, is the total number of data. So for the data that we were looking at with the test scores, that total, our frequency, should add up to 24. To get the frequency, you just state what your tally was. So if your tally was 2 tally marks, your frequency is going to be 2. And then your last column is your product column. Now your product column is the product of the number that's in the data column, so this number here, times the number in the frequency column, which is here. So you multiply the numbers together. And then down at the bottom, so this is going to be, there's going to be another number. So you have the total here, and then the total product is going to be the sum of all the data. All right, so let's so here's the definition. So data column. Here's the frequency column. And here's the product column. All right, so looking at that data from that previous slide, we want to find the range, the mean, the median, and mode. So the very first thing that we have to do is to put the data in order, in ascending order. So once we've done that, we can figure out what the range is. So the highest percent was 100 and the lowest percent was 68, which means our range is 32. Now, to calculate the mean, there is actually a formula that we can use using the frequency distribution table. So if we take the data of those test scores and fill out a frequency distribution table, which is on page 405 at the top, you'll notice that they have a frequency distribution table for that data of those test scores. So we can take the product total divided by the frequency total and we can get our mean. So the product total was 2,046 and our frequency total was 24. So 2,046 divided by 24 is approximately 85.3. So that's going to be our mean. So our median is, since there are 24 scores, our median is going to be between the 12th and the 13th score. So our 12th score was 86 and our 13th score was 88. So in between those would be 87. And then our mode is the score that occurred the most. So if you're looking on page 405 at the frequency distribution table, you'll see that the score of 88 has the most tallies. It has a frequency of 5. So that would be your mode, 88. All right, so the next type of table I want to look at, it's called an interval frequency table. So an interval frequency table is going to have intervals instead of data, and then the frequency that numbers appear within that interval. So let's take a look at page 406. And we have this interval frequency table. So you have some different ages. So this would be between the ages of 10 and 19, there are 14 people. Between the ages of 20 and 29, there are 10 people. Between the ages of 30 and 39, there are 17 people. So notice that the intervals are even. There's exactly the same amount in each interval. And then also notice that it goes from 10 to 19, but it doesn't include 20 because 20 is in the next interval. So it's very distinct where those intervals begin and end. All right, so from our interval frequency table, we can create what is called a histogram. A histogram is essentially a bar graph that represents those equal intervals with no space between the bars. So here would be the histogram for the interval frequency table that had those ages with the frequency of those ages. So notice that first interval was between 10 and 19, and it was 14 people. That second interval was between 20 and 29, and it had 10 people. That third interval on that table was between 30 and 39, and it had 17 people. So this is how you make a histogram. All right, so the next table we have here is a little bit more detailed. So you still have an interval, but along with the interval, you have the midpoint of that interval. So to find the midpoint, it's kind of like taking the average of these two numbers. So 10 plus 19 divided by 2, you get 14.5. So you get a midpoint, right? And then you still have the frequency. But now that you know what your midpoint is, you can actually calculate the product. So the product is your midpoint times your frequency.